What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing part 3 of the KLX110 EFI conversion. Let's just get straight to it. So in the last video we left off with the engine mounted and the throttle body hardly clearing and the hardware working. So that's exactly where we are now, except I removed the rest of the wiring from the frame. I left these little clips on here even though we may or may not use them. They're there, and I pulled the harness from the Z125. Right now I've got to go through this harness and take out everything that I don't want to switch over to this bike, like turn signals, headlight, tail light. I'm probably going to run one of my LED headlights on it, but I don't need all the stuff in this harness, and I don't want to run the factory headlight turn signal style switch. It's mounted on the left side of the bars. It's just really bulky, and it's not something I want to use on a primarily a dirt bike, you know. So I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna go through, I gotta cut all this like convoluted or corrugated tubing off of this harness. This is the factory ECU. The programmer also has to go in here as well. So there's a lot of stuff and it's very bulky, and we have a lot less, you know, real estate to work with as far as running all this wire and the relays and stuff like that. So I'm just gonna pull it all apart, figure out what I need, what I don't need, what I want and what I don't want, and we're gonna pull all of that out. We'll cut it out of the harness, and I'm probably gonna end up shortening this harness as well. All of this all goes to the cluster. Now I did pull the cluster, and maybe we're gonna use it. I don't know, it's pretty bulky. It would be cool, I guess, but it may look really weird up here. There's not a ton of room just to like physically have this thing exist. But it'd be kind of cool. It'd be sweet to see the check engine light if there is one. And I guess, you know, mile per hour and RPM is cool as well. It's not common, but it would be sweet. I just got most of the wiring exposed. I pulled off all of this crap. You can see they do stuff like this where there's one junction for a ton of ground wires and they all share the same spot. And that's how a lot of factory wiring harnesses are built, and it's very standard. Now, one of the coolest things about switching plastics is that with the new setup, it has a spot for the battery, and the batteries are the exact same. So I already slid it in, it fits perfect. Now the disadvantage is that this is an 05 frame, so it's not provisioned for it. I was looking at some photos on my phone, and what I came up with is, let's see if I can get this to focus here. That here, you know, this mount right here is that lower mount right above my thumb, and you know, the rest is kind of self-explanatory. I don't have my tank yet, so I can't really position my front fairings or plastics or whatever you want to call them. And because I can't do that, I can't really mount the seat. I can't do anything back here. But what I do know is that that bar is absolutely in the way. So I'm gonna cut that bar out and try to see if I can get the fender to fit in there pretty well, and then go from there. All right, so this clip from the last clip has been about a month, and I was waiting on a handful of things: fuel tank, gas cap for the fuel tank, and well, that's really it. But without the tank, you can't do anything. You can't eye anything up because the tank uses the factory mounts from the first gen tank. It's the same as far as how it sits in the frame, but everything else is laid out by that location. Plastics, rear plastics, everything. And then of course I need this, right, because I need to have the battery. This has to get trimmed out. So I bought some 5/8 tubing, and I got it locally. It's 1/8 wall, which is gonna be super heavy, but it's all they have. And I didn't really care to look any harder. I'm not using very much of it. This side doesn't have to be touched since it's very close to what looks like the setup is on the 2010 Plus frame from the factory. So I'm gonna try to leave all of this here for sake of making it easier. It's almost like it's gonna act as a jig. And so this actually does come up from the underside. And if you have a second gen KLX, you already know that. But it took me a second to just look at it and sort out the best way to attack it. I did get some different bars on here. I pulled the bars off of my CRF, and they already had a headlight kit on there. It's one of the light kits that I sell, and they're a lot higher rise, or well, a little bit higher rise than the tag bars, but they look a lot better in my opinion. And it's because I pulled the 110 bend Pro Taper bars off of that Z125 and put them on my CRF with a new set of Marzocchi forks. I'm pretty stoked about. I think it looks pretty cool. If you squint, it almost looks done. I'm still waiting on a header. I've bought like 3 different exhaust systems, and due to COVID or people just not wanting to actually ship them, I don't have anything except for this old Pitster Pro header. And then I also found this tall seat that I had. It's from a Chinese bike, but it had KLX style plastics. So I don't know how stiff it is. It may not be the best foam. I don't really remember riding this one, but it will work for now until I order something else. Next is start bending the tubing up. This seems to be what's holding me back on this battery box location area thing. So I'm gonna cut this tab off, and we're gonna see if we can slide this all the way forward. And now it's like the lower part of the plastic right here is catching, so I'm gonna trim that real quick. And you can see that those bolt holes right here, they do line up. On this side, same deal. Maybe put a zip tie or a bolt and a nut through there. and then I can actually I'll cut this off first, this old subframe bar, and then we'll mount this, and then I'm gonna make a new tube that comes from roughly the same spot and goes down like this, connects down here at that same location. And if you ever look at one, like I said before, the curvature is literally that same movement. So it'll match factory like pretty close. And then we gotta redo this top bar up here, which probably goes like, you know, through that. I probably never had to cut that off, to be totally honest. That's probably where I made a big mistake. I do still have that tube, so I'm gonna grab it and we'll check it. Well, would you look at that overambitious cut that got me nothing but time wasted thrown in the trash. This bar was perfect. It didn't have to go anywhere. Damn it. It is what it is. It's not that big a deal. It was gonna be a welded up, cut up subframe anyway on a bike that's probably never gonna get sold, but it is a little bit frustrating. Oh well, now you guys know, don't make this mistake. If you're trying to run the 2010 plus plastics on a 2009 or older, all you have to do is cut this subframe bar out and nothing else if you wanna run a battery. If you don't wanna run a battery, I imagine you could just cut the fender back here and none of this would matter, and it wouldn't matter what the subframe bar did right there. My mistake, oh well. Quick interjection, it looks like I'm very lucky I didn't cut the crossbar that's right there and move it back like the other KLXs are. That bar's not gonna be an issue. When this sits up in position, which is roughly there, and the seat sits down in its spot, everything is what it looks like on point. I mean, there's a gap, but nothing's tight right now. Same thing for that, there's a gap there, but the seat's not even locked into that screw that holds it down, or that, yeah, that Phillips head screw. So yeah, all this stuff is good. So none of that has to change. Now I do know that these are gonna be off. I already lined up the number plates and these aren't gonna work, but the offset, meaning the distance from here to the face of it where the fender sits, is probably, it looks to be the same, so we'll see. But what I can maybe do is cut it in here and grind it minimally so I don't take off too much material, and then we'll just bolt it to the fender, and then wherever it lands, we'll tack it, pull the fender, and we'll weld it completely. Gotta pull the shock out of the way so I can completely grind off that tab we cut out of the way before. So with the upper bar welded, I can move to the bottom. So I'm gonna prep this, cut that off. We'll prep that one while I'm over here, and then I gotta put everything back on it after it cools down, and we can work on this tube and the bend that we need to have. I have a tubing bender and I always forget that I have it because I don't use it very often. You can see I've already got it loaded up and it's already actually bent. This is an 1.25 inch die, but you can get it done like this if you're just careful, because once it's wedged, it doesn't really matter. You cannot unbend this stuff. So we're gonna go to 40 and then we'll check. I went to about 42 degrees after a little bit of testing and it's still not bent enough. I don't know how much it really rides in the curvature of that fender relief, but it needs to come way up. I'm gonna add some more bend to it until it lines up with this. It almost looks like it's 90 degrees. I wanna mock up the fender one more time. The hardest part here is gonna be the slash cut. It's not really that hard to cut the angle, but it is hard to cut it on the right plane so that when this tube line up there, it also comes in along this curve, which, you know, it'd be like that, but at that angle, and then the slash here. One shot, one kill is the goal here. I stared at this for a few minutes and I realized that I was wrong. This bar does have to bend inward, and the reason being is the swing arm clearance is not there. So without the shock, it's hard to see exactly where it's gonna lie, but the swing arm will sit, I mean, close to where it is right now, but obviously it needs to have room for shock travel. So I threw it back in the bender and added this bend down here. With it cut down now, I can show you the bend comparison. There we go, it's close enough for me. It's slash cut and ready to party. It looks pretty good, definitely good enough to MIG weld. TIG weld, it could fit a little better on this side obviously, and maybe down there, but for MIG weld, I think we're just gonna go ahead and call her a day. All right, as you can see, it's still cooling down. There's some stuff burning off, residual shit in there, whatever. But welds came out okay. As of right now, we have a successfully working subframe. I think, I hope. Should be sick.